We are going to paint a bicycle with a basket full of flowers in this tutorial. So we've got our canvas panel. This is a 9 by 12 canvas panel. If you're using paper, definitely get paper that's meant to hold acrylic paint. It's super thick and won't get wrinkly when you paint on it. But I am using a canvas panel today. I've got my paint palette here with all of the colors listed below. So we've got 2 shades of green, purple, a light bright blue, almost a teal, pink, black and white of course, and then a brown and a gold. I've also got my clean water cup with 3 different paint brushes. One here is a large wide flat brush, which we'll use for the background. And then I've got 2 different sizes of smaller flat brush for the main painting. And then I've also got a paper towel off to the side. So I'm gonna be using my paper towel to blot my paintbrush when I pick it up out of the water. So we'll go ahead and get started by painting our background. I'm gonna make my background a very light blue. So I'm gonna mix some blue and some white to get that really light. You can mix it on your palette like this, or you can just take those 2 colors on your brush and just paint right on your canvas and let it mix as you're painting on your canvas. Sometimes I like to do this because then you can see the different variations in the shade. So you can see some darker areas, some lighter areas, and it doesn't blend all the way, or you don't have to blend it all the way, I should say. And we're just gonna use these wide sideways strokes to paint our background. I want it to be super light blue. My bicycle in this painting is also going to be blue, so I just want to make sure that it's a big enough difference from the background. And you can see the different shades of blue and white in there too. Which, like I said, that's one advantage of mixing it right on the canvas, is you can see all those different variations. There's white right in here and then a darker shade over here. So that's one thing I really like about doing it this way. All right, once you get your canvas all the way painted, go ahead and let it dry, and then we'll get started with our painting. Once your painting is dry, we're gonna come in with a pencil and sketch out the basic elements of our painting. So our bicycle with the basket of flowers is gonna be, the flowers are gonna be the main focal point right in here. And then we're gonna have the back wheel going off the edge right over here. And then of course you'll be able to see the basket and a little bit of the handlebars. But for the most part, the flowers are going to be the main focal point. So what we're going to start with is drawing on where our basket is going to be. So it's going to be at an angle like this because our handlebars are going to be turned toward us. Imagine the front wheel of the bicycle turned toward us, whereas the back wheel will be pointing that way. So it's coming at an angle right toward us. So we're going to do a little basket starting about right here to about right here, with some angled lines down, and then come across the middle to connect them, just something like that. And then we'll do a curved line at the top just to show that it's 3D, but we won't really be able to see the back part of the basket because the flowers will be covering it. So it'll look just something like that. And just a little trick, any pencil mark you make or any section you don't like how it looks, we'll be able to cover it with a flower. So don't worry too much about getting this just right, because we can always do flowers even draping over the front to just cover any pencil mark that you make. So we'll do a basket just kind of like this, knowing our flowers are going to take up a lot of space right in here. Then we've got to think about our handlebars. And the handlebars are gonna come back. They're gonna go away from us, away from the front of the basket. And we're just gonna do a curved line back like that. Okay? You can do the edge or the grip of the handlebars like that if you want. And you don't have to. You can just leave it like that, and then we'll paint the grip on. So that's going to be the front of our bike, and then what we'll need to do is the very front of the wheel right down here, just a curved line going down like that all the way to the edge of our canvas, and then a smaller line connecting it. Okay, so that's going to be the front of our bike, knowing that our flowers are going to take up a big portion right here in the middle. Then what we're going to do is draw on our back wheel in this corner. So we're going to start on the right side and just do a curved line down to the bottom of our canvas. Then we're going to come under it and do another one. And then that's gonna be the wheel cover, which is gonna be this teal color that we used for the background. So that's gonna be the wheel cover of our little cruiser bike. So we're gonna do one more skinny line here to show the edge of the wheel, and then the rest we'll do the lines for spokes. You don't have to draw these in if you don't want to. You want all of your lines to go toward the middle of the bike wheel, and we'll wind up painting those on anyway. So one more piece we need is a seat, which is going to be to the top left of this wheel here. So we're going to do kind of an angled triangle. The seat is going to be pointed this way. So we're going to do a line like that and then come to a point, not really a point, just a curved edge, and then come around to the back like that. And then we need to connect our front wheel and our back wheel, and bikes look so different, and again our flowers are going to be hanging over the sides anyway, so we don't need to put a whole lot of detail into this part, but we will do some. So I'm going to do just a quick line down from the seat like that, and then we'll do a line across, just straight across. And then one more line down from the center of the wheel. Actually, it'll come up toward the seat. Like that, connecting this part of the bike to that. So these lines will be the teal color, whereas the spokes will be black. And then you can do another line down if you want to here. And then connect it there. So you've got kind of a little triangle in the middle of the bike. You don't have to do this line across here. You could just do that one. It's really kind of up to you. But remember that you don't have to put a lot of detail into this because our flowers are going to be coming over the side here and up and down and covering a lot of this. So we're actually going to paint our bike last because we're going to paint all our flowers first. Usually we would paint from the background levels forward, but in this case so much of the bike is going to be covered by the flowers that we are going to paint the flowers first. Actually, we're going to do the basket first, then the flowers, and then the bike is going to be painted at the end in the background. So I'm not going to draw on my flowers here. You can, but I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to go ahead and paint them. So we'll start with our basket, paint our pretty flowers, and then do the final details of the bike. So we're finished drawing, and now we will move on to painting. So definitely get your paint palette ready to go with these colors. They're listed below this video, and we're going to get started painting with our medium-sized flat brush. So I've got my brush here, and like I said, we're going to paint that basket first. So I'm going to get a bit of brown and gold and just fill it in, and we're going to add the detail in a little bit. So just brown and gold mixed together, a little bit of white to make a tan color. We're gonna follow our pencil lines. We're gonna make it have kind of a basket weave effect, but right now we're just doing our first layer. All right, once you've got your basket filled in with paint, then we can start adding the detail. Just like that. One thing we do want to do is make sure the bottom of our basket is darker than the top, just on this first layer even, because we want to show where the shadows are. So go ahead and do your brown on the bottom like this. Oops, out of the lines. Fill in brown down here, and then we'll grab some white to lighten up the very top. All right. We're gonna let that dry, not all the way, but we're gonna let it get a little bit more dry than it is now, and then we're gonna add our basket weave effect. But in the meantime, what we could do is start drawing our flowers. So we're gonna do a mix of pink and purple flowers in this basket. So I'm gonna grab some pink and mix it with a bit of white, and I'm gonna do some tulips. So we're gonna do just a U shape like that, and then a point in the middle like that. And then we're gonna come back and add detail, but we're just placing them right now. So U shape, and a point in the middle. There we go. Now I don't want to paint over the side of my basket right now because it's wet, but once we're finished with the basket and this paint dries, I'll be able to paint down here too, but we're just not going to do that just yet. Just placing these flowers all over, these stems will all lead back into the basket. Do one more right here. Over here. So just these basic shapes, then we're going to come back in and add detail to them. But for now we're just plotting on the shapes. Then what you can do is grab a bit of white paint on your brush and come in and just do the sides of each tulip like that. So you take your white paint on the corner of your brush, come on one side of it, and add your white paint, crossing all the way down to the bottom, then come back on the other side and add some white paint, but don't go all the way to the bottom. Only paint until it meets your initial white paint. Like that. So we'll do that on all of our tulips. This is showing us where the petals are. This is an easy way to define each petal without having to paint every little thing. This just draws your eye, and that's what we want. One more. There we go. Cleaning off my brush now, and I'm gonna add in some white tulips now. So plain white, I'm gonna do the same thing with my white paint. U shapes like this. all over with white. Now just a little tip. It's always best to do an odd number of things because that ironically balances your painting out a little bit more. So you'll notice 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 pink tulips. So we're gonna do an odd number of white tulips as well. I've got 5 right now. We'll see what it looks like when I get to 7. So use your own judgment in your own painting, however many tulips you feel like. 6, we'll do one up here. I think I like that at 7. So we've got 7 white tulips and 7 pink tulips. Cleaning off my paintbrush now. And what I'm gonna do with my white tulips is I'm just gonna get just a hint of purple and then bring my white to mix it to make a really light purple because we need a way to make a shadow on these white tulips. I don't want to use black because I don't want it to be too bold, so I'm going to use a really light purple like this and do the same thing I did on these pink flowers with the white paint. Just do a stroke down on the side and then one on the other side, just to show the difference in the petals on the flower. Got one on one side and then on the other. Making our way through all of our white tulips. Just adding a little bit of detail. All right, so we've got our white tulips done. We've got our pink tulips done. Now we're gonna add some greenery. So we're gonna take our dark green and our light green and mix them together with some white. Right, so now we've got 3 shades of green, and we're going to use all of them to fill this in. So we want each of our tulips to have a stem, okay? A stem coming back toward the inside of the basket. We don't have to be too concerned about where the stem winds up because we're going to fill all this in with greenery. But we want to show each stem coming back at least from the base of the tulip. So that's what we're doing now using the green that we just mixed. Just drawing that from each tulip toward the center of the basket. Okay. All right, once you've done that, come back to each plant. You might want to switch to your smaller brush for this, your smaller flat brush. Using the same shade of green, we're just going to give a little base to each of these tulips, just a little bit underneath like that, to each one. like that, okay? So now we're cleaning off our paintbrush, and then we're gonna add some more greens to our stems in our basket. We are using the same brush, the smaller flat brush that we had. We're gonna come in with some dark green, the darker, just this one, not mixed with anything. We're gonna come down here in the basket and start from the bottom and just go out. We're careful around our flowers that we've painted, and we're just going from the bottom out. One way to get a point on your leaves like that, on your stems and everything, is to flick your paintbrush up when you get to it. So I'll show you right here. We're painting the stem, and flick your paintbrush up and it'll come to a point. Or not a stem, but a leaf. Before we get too far into doing these leaves, we need to go back and add the detail on our basket, which is what we'll do next, because we want some of our leaves to spill over the front, but we can't do that until we have done our basket. So we'll just continue adding this layer of greenery, and once we're done here, then we'll go back and fill in our basket a little bit more. So the goal with this layer is to just add some dark undertones as you're getting close to the basket right in here. All of these pieces will be shadowed because they're underneath everything, so they should be darker. All right, that's where we're gonna stop. We're just adding greenery. Each line you do, you flick upwards to make a point. And we're gonna come back to our basket now. So I'm gonna take some brown paint and really emphasize the bottom corner. I wanna show that that's where the shadow is. The bike is leaning that direction. So I want to show that this is a 3D basket and there's a shadow on the side like that. Now I'm going to do what I did before, take my brown, take some gold and some white. And come to the top. And just paint down toward that brown that we painted just now. So we're gonna grab our gold, brown, and white mixture. And we're gonna do a line across the top of the basket, all the way. Okay? Now we're gonna do that same thing right below it. One more line all the way across. We're touching the line we just made, curving as we go around the side. Okay? We're just gonna keep going, adding some darkness to this side back. We're gonna do one more. Right underneath, following that curve, around. Add some darkness as you need it, some of the brown. over here. Just keep going all the way down. I was gonna stop there, but we're gonna do the whole thing. Making these lines all the way. All right, I'm gonna clean off my paintbrush and smooth out that one just a bit. But we've got all of our lines all the way down. So this is the base of our basket weave. So now what we're gonna do is paint vertical lines starting in the middle, and they're gonna go over and then under and then over and then under, okay? So, or that's the effect that we're going for. So what we're gonna do is take some white paint, and we're going to paint highlights vertically on the bands that we're going over, okay? So I'm gonna start on this one, and then skip the next one, then come down to the third one, then skip it, and then come down to this one, okay? Now what we're gonna do, grab more white paint, move to the right, and do the opposites. So paint your vertical stripe on the bands that we didn't paint one on before, okay? And then we're just gonna keep going, painting in between each one all the way across the basket, okay? Skip, come down to this one, and skip, come down. And you want to do this while your paint is still wet on the basket, because that's going to give us those darker tones where you've used your darker paint and the lighter tones where you've used the lighter paint. We don't want this to be bright white, we just want it to be a bit of a highlight where it's going over the other piece, okay? Just gonna make our way all the way through. Notice I didn't grab any more paint for this side because I wanted it to be darker. So now let's move on to the other side. And finish it off by painting around to the left. Right. So we've got the first layer of our basket done. Actually, I guess that would be the second layer, wouldn't it? Now what we're gonna do is grab some of our brown paint, and we're going to come do a horizontal brown line where the top parts are going underneath the other part. So like that. On either end of the top parts, or the pieces that are on top, okay? So we're gonna do one row at a time. Then clean off your brush, and then come smooth it out with just horizontal strokes like that. That's gonna leave a little bit of a shadow. right, so I've got some brown paint. Doing the tops and the bottoms of each of the white marks that we've done. The brown paint is going to show a shadow going underneath this other piece, okay? So you want to do horizontal paint strokes, tiny little paint strokes. And clean off your brush, and then come back over the white part, blend it vertically like that too. And what you're going to be left with is this basket weave pattern. You're not going to have these bold white marks, you're just going to be left with the pattern using our paint strokes, using the light and the dark, just like that. So each section you turn your brush, so if it's on top, you paint it vertically, and if it's the basket weave that are going that way, you paint it, if it's the white marks that we've done, you paint vertically, and if it's the rest of it, we paint it horizontally. And the paint strokes, the direction of your paint stroke is going to have a lot to do with how your basket weave winds up looking. So adding in our brown, I'm going to do 2 rows this time. Clean off my brush, and then do my horizontal paint strokes on the darker areas that we didn't do the white. Now I'm going to come back to the white and do my vertical paint strokes. Sometimes you can get away with doing a bit more if you've got just some darkness on your brush. I'm going to do these last couple of rows over here, adding in this shadow. Cleaning off my brush, and now doing my horizontal strokes in all of the darker areas, okay? Clean off my brush, and now the vertical paint strokes in every area where we painted the white. There we go. All right, so we've finished the right side of our basket. Now we're gonna move toward the left. Everywhere that you have a bright white spot, just wanna blend it. We don't want it to be bright white, we just want it to be lighter than the rest of it, okay? So we'll take our brown, do the same thing. Below and above each bright white spot, do a little brown mark like that. I'm gonna do 2 rows at a time. Okay. Clean off your brush. Now we'll come in and do our horizontal paint strokes in the areas that are darker. Okay. Cleaning off our brush again, and come back and do our vertical blending paint strokes in the areas that are lighter where we did add that white. All right, we are almost done. Coming back, adding our brown above and below each white mark. And now we're in the darker areas, doing our sideways horizontal paint strokes, going with the direction of the basket. Okay, clean off our brush, and now coming back on top of the white that we added and doing these vertical paint strokes. There we go. Now we've got our basket weave for our basket. And once that's dry, we'll be able to paint over the top of it with more flowers and leaves falling over. But we had to get that painted first before we could add those flowers and leaves. So now we're gonna let that dry before we paint anything else on top of it. But we can go ahead and move forward and continue adding to our flower arrangement. Moving back into our basket of flowers, I'm going to do some tall pieces sticking out that'll have little purple buds on them. So I'm going to use a mix of my dark green and my light green. And a little bit of brown. Okay, I'm going to make sure I don't have a ton of paint on my brush. Stick it in the paint. And these are just gonna kind of appear in the back of the arrangement. So you don't have to start all the way at the bottom of the front. You can just kind of float one like this. And then we're gonna do little bitty lines like that. Using your brush vertically to get that skinny line. I'm still using my smaller paintbrush. Do another one coming out up here. Just a series of little branches like that we'll eventually add some flower buds onto, but right now we're just doing the branches. Let's do one coming out this direction. Remember, we always do odd numbers, okay? So I've got 3 now, and the choice you can make is to do another one and add 5, or another 2, I mean, and add 5, or leave it at 3. At this point, I'm gonna leave it at 3. I'm gonna add my flower buds on, and then we're gonna see how we feel. So I'm gonna take my purple paint, not mixed with anything, and on each branch, just add a dot of purple. I'm using the corner of my paintbrush, just dotting them on. Not perfect circles, but also not very big dots. Corner of my brush. Go. Now within each of these dots, we're going to take some purple and mix it with white. Get a lighter shade. We're going to dip the corner of our paintbrush in that mixture and just add a smaller dot in each of these that you've already done. Just adds a little bit of dimension and interest. There we go. Just like that. off our brush. I'm going to add another layer to these stems. Actually, I think that might be the only one that really needed it. Now we're going to come back with that same color and add some more down here. So my basket is still a little bit wet, so I don't want to add anything flopping over the front yet, but I can come in here and just do quick little, brief little strokes with that darker color, just adding some more different shades of green coming out of our basket. Okay? You want to wait till your basket is all the way dry before you add anything in the front. I think I'm going to add a couple of more flowers in the front coming over the edge. Some pink or white ones, or maybe both. In the meantime, I'm going to add some bright green accents up through here. Tulip leaves are long and pointy, so they're tall and come to a point. So you could add some leaf-like sections, leaf-like pieces coming out, or you can just do a paint stroke following the flow of everything just coming out of this basket. And it'll look like a leaf, it'll look like a stem, it'll look like flowers, but you won't be able to see each individual one, and that's kind of the goal. When you're painting, it doesn't have to be, you don't have to follow each individual stem back to where it starts. You just want the illusion of lots of stems and leaves. So that's why we're doing all those different shades of green in this basket, so that we have that illusion of a lot coming out of it. All right, my basket is pretty dry at this point, so I'm gonna add some more flowers coming over the front. So I'm gonna go back to my pink color. So it's dried on my palette now, so I'm just gonna mix some more. Some pink mixed with some white. And I'm gonna add a tulip hanging over the edge right here. Like that. And I think one more here. All right, cleaning off my brush, and then I'm gonna come back in and add that white to differentiate the petals. So one side, and then come to the other side, meeting where you added the white for the first side. There we go. Add just a little bit more bright white on this one. Don't want it to have a drip. When it drips like that, that means you have too much water on your paintbrush. Means I didn't blot it enough when I took it out of my water cup. All right, now I'm gonna add that bright white back on both of these. And then we're gonna add our greenery. So just like with the stems for flowers, you don't have to paint each individual petal. You just have to, the goal is to paint the illusion of petals, and we do that by using our brush stroke to create the the movement with your eye. So right in here you can see that those are 2 petals, but we didn't go in and paint every little detail. So that's just a fun trick with painting. Painting flowers, painting leaves, painting really anything. You're painting the illusion of it, not necessarily every small detail. Now I'm gonna come in with my greens, and I'm gonna add some greenery coming over the edge too. So I've got my darkest shade of green. Remember, we want each flower to have a stem going back toward the basket. Now I'm going to switch to my lighter shade of green. Going back and forth between the 2. To really show that these flowers are spilling out over the edge. And there we go. Now don't be afraid to paint over any of your flowers with the leaves. For instance, this flower over here has some leaf painted over it. That just shows different depth and dimension. So what you want to show different things in the front versus in the back. You want to show that. So not every single flower would be in the front realistically. So don't be afraid to cover up just a little bit of your flowers when you're painting these leaves on, this greenery. I'm gonna do some shooting out over here. Another trick with painting is if you don't want to paint something, like I don't really want to paint this handlebar on this side, you can just add some greenery to cover up where the handlebar would be, like that. I don't have a reason for not wanting to paint the handlebar. I just wanted to show you a way that you could avoid it if you didn't want to. So see, we've got that greenery sticking out, completely covered up where our handlebar would have gone. You could do that this side too. I'm painting this handlebar. I'm not going to cover the whole thing, but for instance, right in here will be kind of hard to paint because of our purple flower. So we'll just have a leaf sticking out over here. So you don't have to plan every single bit of your painting when you're drawing it. You can adapt and move forward as you paint your painting. You don't have to stick with exactly what you had planned. Okay? So you see how that covered not only did it cover where our handlebar would be, but it also covered a little bit of that flower there. So that's, another thing. They would realistically not necessarily all be showing for the entire thing. Every single bud would not necessarily be in the front. There we go. All right, our flower basket is looking pretty good. We're gonna move on now to paint our bike, and we're gonna start by painting this front section here and just all of the metal parts of the bike. So the wheel covers and then these right in here. So like I mentioned, my bike is going to be teal. You can make your bike whatever color you want, but mine is gonna be teal. So I'm just gonna take my teal paint with no other colors right now and just fill in this front wheel cover right here. all the way down. I'm still using my smallest flat brush. You could use a larger one for this point, but we would switch back to the small one for this area right in here. So I'm just using the small one for the whole thing. All right, so we've got our first coat of teal. Now I'm gonna grab some white and just do a line right down the middle of white. Want to show a highlight right in the middle of that one. Right. You can come back in on the sides if you want to with your first color, mine being teal, yours being whatever color you chose. Here we go. Now we're going to move on and paint this interior section right here. So grab your teal paint, turn your brush sideways so you can get a thinner line, and follow your pencil marks. Now we're going to paint this diagonal line. And then come up. We're going to do the line up to the seat, or the piece up to the seat, and then this back wheel cover. You can turn your brush sideways to paint the back wheel cover to get the whole thing done in one stroke. There we go. Now what I'm going to do is mix a tan color to paint the seat. So I've got my brown and my gold and my white, just like we were using for the basket. I'm going to paint the seat this color, and then also this inner rim of the back wheel this color. So we've got our seat following our pencil marks. Okay, and then clean off your brush and grab some brown to paint the back of the seat, just to add a shadow here, and this front side. If you get too much paint on your brush, you can always come back and blend it with a clean brush. We can also add this step after this tan color has dried a bit. But that's really it. You just want to add a little bit of a shadow to the side of the seat there. Now we're going to use that same color of tan to paint right up next to this blue and do the outside of the wheel. Not the wheel, I guess, but the tire. The part you would see under the wheel cover. I've got my hand perched on my easel to make it a little bit easier to and more steady to move my hand like that. So now I'm going to come back and add another coat to this wheel cover. And then at this point I'm going to add my white highlight right up here. And coming down to a point like that. You can blend it with a clean brush. And now we're going to do our wheel spokes. So we're going to grab some black paint, use our brush vertically, and very gently we're going to paint a line downwards using our brush vertically so we have the skinniest line. Right? You could also use a marker for this part if this makes you nervous. Right? Now we need to let that dry before we add the connector that connects the wheel and to the rest of the bike. So what we'll do is add another layer right in here. And down here. And then come in with our white highlight. Oh. And a little bit of tan in my white. Don't want that. I'm going to pick it back up. Clean off my brush. Make sure I grab a clean bit of white paint. And then add the highlight. Do a little bit on this bottom, but not as much. And you could add a shadow by adding black, adding purple, or just leaving it the darker teal. I'm just gonna leave mine the darker teal because I want my painting to be bright. So the final step is to paint this back connector part, but I'm gonna wait till my black spokes dry before I do that. So I'm gonna let that dry and then get to that. All right, my black back spokes are dry, so I've got some teal paint on my brush. I'm gonna do a circle covering where the spokes meet right there, and then turn my brush sideways and follow this line. I've got two lines, one coming this way on the front, and then one over on this other side that connects my wheel to the bike. There you go, like that. You don't have to do that part. I think it'll look like a bike whether you add that little bit or not. But it's your call. Now I'm adding my white highlight. And I'm not going to do it on the back side. What I am going to do is come back with my black paint and just cover that side of it with the spokes. So I want that to show like it's in the back, okay? All right, there we go. Now we've got our bike basket full of flowers. You could always add more flowers. You could do different kinds of flowers. You could add a bird in the sky. You could add a background of, a building or a field. I always want you to know that there are so many things and directions you could take your paintings in. So this is our base, and you can add to it or you can just paint it as is. So I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. I can't wait to see what you painted. So post it, tag me. I look forward to seeing your paintings.